Hello, my name is Nicolette Johnson. I'm a visual arts teacher in Hanover High School, and today I'd like to talk to you about how to host an art show in your media center. I know for us, we've always had the independent small show that happens in the spring. So our students would have an opportunity for the public, family, and friends to come see their artwork in the mall, which is already a public open space. The issue is that we don't have that same opportunity in the fall semester. We have block scheduling, so we'll have one group of students from August to about early January, and then a new group from January to May. And so we really took the Independent Small Show and used it as an opportunity to make sure all of our students were represented, but again, we weren't able to do that in the fall because we did not have an opportunity. So along the way, we thought about how our media center is this really great space for student project proposals. It's been used for a lot of different opportunities. And so we started off a plan of trying to use the space for art shows for our students. So it basically stands in as a smaller art show that takes the place of the independent small show in the spring, but we still have a lot of great impact on our students through this. And we do host the art show after school, so even potentially parents and family can also come see it during after school hours as well. To start preparing for it, we always have to make sure our students know what's coming up and know how to prepare themselves. So one of the very first day of class, we mentioned, hey, your final exam in this class is going to be you presenting your artwork. And we'll go over the details later, but just keep in the back of your head that you are going to be a presenting artist in this class. You're not just going to make things and then throw them away and then nobody gets to ever see your work. You will be presenting. That is part of being an artist, is having your work presented to the public. So a small assignment that we do a couple of weeks before the actual art show is we'll have our students create advertisements about the art show. And I let them think about it in two different ways. They could either design their poster as a little sneak peek of what their piece will look like in the show. Like in this example, the red half mask, that was actually a clay project that was in this art show. And so they did a recreative sketch of their mask so that when people came to the art show, they would know, oh, I'm going to see this kind of artwork there. They could also do kind of just a more towards the advertising aspect of the assignment where they're making little drawings and suggestions of the kind of artwork that would be there. So this on the right hand side, this particular person liked more little magical, botanical little themes going on. So they have all those little elements on there because at that point in time, they still hadn't decided which of their artworks they wanted to put into the show. So they left it more open ended. But it's just a really good reminder of being able to think about, okay, this is our art show. We're going to advertise for it. These advertisements are actually put up around our school. And through the act of our students turning the advertisements in through our Artsonia digital portfolio, because their work is always sent to their parents are also aware. If they check their Artsonia regularly, they'll see the advertisement themselves and know to kind of keep an eye out for when the show comes up. And the show runs all day. We actually, the day before, we reserve our media center the last block the day before, usually on a Tuesday. So, like fourth block on a Tuesday. We reserve it the whole day of Wednesday for the actual art show. And then, first thing in the morning on Thursday during first block is our takedown time. So, students and classes are able to sign up. Actually, more the classes, the teacher and their classes are able to sign up um, to take their classes to the art show. And if students want to individually go, they can be sent to the library, kind of like how you normally would send students to the library at our school. But during the day, it's the teachers leading their classes going to the art show. And then after school, for about an hour, from 4 to 5, myself and the other art teacher will stay after school so that parents and friends and people that have other things going on during the day are able to come see the art show. Again, I just wanted to show more of the different little advertisements. This is the same slide that I show my students as well, of trying to catch people's attention of what's coming up and kind of building that anticipation. And depending on, even so, this is for the mall show we have in the fall, which is really in December. But we move through the same kind of habits that we would do for when we do spring, when we do the Independence Mall show in the spring. Um, so I have that same kind of routine that they move through of thinking about these things. So this is why this slide also has about May, because it's the same thing we're using. The most difficult part of this is that students understand that they're going to be giving you an artwork. It's an artist statement that's a little bit of an unfamiliar topic for them. So, the way I approach it with my students is I say, imagine you're walking into an art gallery. And I have some images of a local art gallery uh, to help my students kind of walk through this process of thinking about it. So if you walk into the art gallery, you'll see a lot of things on the wall going on. And maybe from looking at it, you'll be able to tell it's some kind of drawing. You can see it's on fabric, but you don't have a lot of information. You just see a lot of these artworks and you know there's people going on, but that's the amount of information you can get maybe just from looking at it straight on. And maybe you can kind of see reoccurring motifs, maybe you can interpret that kind of thing. That's where an artist statement comes in. So this example was from Rachel Gloria Adams, and in her artist statement from for her exhibit Bloom for Yesterday, she talks about how she combined painting and quilting. She talked about how she has an illustrative style, and she has subtle clues about her identity and her family's identity. She has all this information that tells us what her quotes and what her artworks are about. And it makes that bigger connection between us as the viewer and the artist looking at the artwork. So I tell my students to think about how before, when we're looking at the quilts, we just thought, oh, it's fabric, oh, there's people, seems like there's some girls that keep on repeating. Now I know this is this person's family and she's having all these memories that she's quilting together, and all the different things that she was considering that we did not know about until we read that artist statement. And so that just kind of really drives home the importance of artist statements, the importance of, again, of course, art history, art aesthetics, art criticism, of getting that full story around an artwork instead of just making snap judgments. So I explained this is what you as students will be doing. You'll be making your own artist statement about your project. Because while I may know your piece is a linoleum stamp that was based on a childhood memory, I know that because I'm your teacher. Other people aren't going to know that. So your artist statement is your opportunity to tell people what's going on with your artwork. And so the way I do this, I have this great handout from this way of doing an art statement from the Art of Education, where it breaks things down into describing, asking how did you create your artwork, what is the big idea, what were your goals for artwork, and what were your overall thoughts. And it's broken down even to further sentence starters for that. I also have it translated into Spanish because that's the most common second language in my classroom. And so I give them a paper copy of this at first so that they can just think about it, draw ideas down, basically do a thumbnail in writing of what they want their art statement to be. And then I'll have them go into a Google form where they actually type out the artist statement, their first name, their title. If they don't want a title, I tell them I can leave it as untitled. I ask what medium they're using. Are they using mixed media? Are they using graphite drawing? Are they using markers? That kind of thing. There's also an other because sometimes you'll have unusual combinations that I don't think of. So maybe somebody used both ink and crayon, and I don't even have crayons in my classroom, so wouldn't think that'd be on there. But I always leave an other there so that people are able to explain what their material is. And then using those 5 questions before, I ask students to write a paragraph explaining their artwork. And they submit this on the Google form. I'll go through and read what they have written, and I actually copy and paste it into the formatting that I prefer for artist statements. It's not anything fancy. I just want to make sure that it has that standard of first name, last initial, the medium, the year, the title, that type of thing. But that's just a personal preference. I know a lot of people do art statements very differently, but that gives me the flexibility to touch things up and ask for clarification if I need it. All right, and then during our actual art show, this is my media center. And like I mentioned before, there's one other art teacher at my school, Miss Rayner. We host this art show together. And the way we kind of break it down is the left side of the room is generally my students' work, and the right hand is generally her students' work. But it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a little bit easier to organize if we keep in mind which side of the room is ours. So I know that I have 6 bookcases to the left where I can put ceramic objects on top. And then we take the big bulletin board paper and we'll lay it out on one of our desks and then use glue sticks that aren't, the washable glue sticks are actually better for this because they're weaker than permanent glue sticks. So we'll use those to glue the artwork to either construction paper or rail board or some kind of nice background border. And then we'll glue that onto the actual bulletin board paper in sheets so that we have about 6 feet long sheets of artwork put down with their artist statements, and we kind of stack them on top of one another as we go. So since I usually have between 4 to 5 of those bulletin board papers stacked on top of each other that I'm taking in as I'm taking student work, and on the day of put up on that Tuesday afternoon, students will actually just carry one of the bulletin board paper and one the other, and we'll walk to the media center, and then we'll temporarily tape up the bulletin board paper to the bookcases. We're careful not to mess up any of the books or anything like that, and it's worked out pretty well for us. Occasionally, heavier artworks might fall down and might shift a little bit, but it hasn't been too big of an issue for us. And for the clay projects, I prefer having them kind of high up because if they're high up, people don't like to try and touch and mess with them as much. But that is always a risk that your students and you should be aware of people accidentally, maybe sometimes on purpose, touching things. And so just keeping that in mind that if you do have something that's more fragile, like we had a chess set that had a lot of mini small pieces, we actually ended up temporarily gluing the pieces down to a little uh, sheet of acetate as well as putting a cover on it so that the pieces wouldn't move and people wouldn't be tempted to mess with them. So that was just another little consideration you have to think about. But we have all that big area, and we're very lucky. We have such a nice media center, and our librarian is really wonderful. I bet she'd prefer to be mainly a librarian, but she's responsible for so many other things like technology that she is in charge of everything and is always helping us out. For the individual pieces, again, you'll see the artworks and then you'll see the artist statement right beside it. And I only put it on one side of the bookcase because when people are looking at it, the bookcases are kind of close, so you don't want people crammed up and bumping into the artwork, that type of thing. So they're only on one side. But again, depending on what kind of space you have, could be really helpful. I just really recommend measuring things out first. I know for certain fact that those bookcases are 6 feet across because I went in and measured them beforehand. We also have a comment box, and there are two different ways for people to use comments. They can scan the QR code and make a digital comment. There's also good old fashioned paper where they can write down their comment, fold it up, and put it in our little box. This is just a nice way of people to kind of give feedback on what they thought of the art show. It is also nice for students to have their friends come and write notes to show that they were able to see the show and they're proud of them. It's just a nice little touch. There is also my ceramic pieces that you see. Some of the flatter pieces, like tiles and masks, are being held up by old book stands that our librarian was getting rid of because she had new ones that were coming in that were a little bit sturdier. So our librarian's also great for looking out for us in that way. Of those work out perfectly of holding up those flatter items for us. So, while of course it takes organization on my end as the art teacher, some work, some planning, it also definitely has an impact on our media coordinator. So, I wanted to get some insight into how the media coordinator felt the impact of our art shows in her media center were. So, I had some interview questions for her that she answered. The first question I had for her were, what are the benefits to students of having an art show in the media center? And she said, without a designated flex space like a multi purpose room, the library becomes the go to space for group events. The library is typically centrally located and familiar to students, so more eyes see the artwork than if it was tucked into the art classrooms or a different random space. The library is also a space that is almost always staffed, so there is supervision and someone to engage with the viewers about the art. In our situation, there's also a librarian with an art degree that loves to talk about art. And true to her word, our librarian is wonderful. She actually has her media center students create book displays to interest students into different genres and different books throughout the semester. And she has her students present that in the library, but she also sends that out to emails to all of us, to all of our staff, to see the wonderful things that her students are showing off by using their artwork as a form of advertisement. So she is very supportive with the arts with our students. And at our school, it is the most, what I would say, opportune place for an art show. We do have two gymnasiums, but they are very well used by sports events, by different things. The acoustics in there are also not pleasant. It is very loud. The sound bounces a lot. We also have a cafeteria that's sometimes used for group events, but again, the acoustics are not that great. There's low ceilings. I wouldn't the poor cafeteria workers, I wouldn't really want to get in their way of hosting an art show in there. Because, at least for our librarian, yes, we do take up her space for a day and a half, but students are still able to use other parts of the library. They're still able to get to most of the books. Things are still able to be kind of used in the space, and it's not quite as cumbersome as being in a cafeteria would be. But yeah, for um, it is a good space to use, at least that I've found, if you have limited options at your particular school. But you always could look into outside venues. I know there are banks and local public libraries and even our local arboretum that could potentially be used to host art shows. So don't think you have to think in the box of places for art shows. If you have students that are willing and the people that have the space are willing, you can have student artwork in a lot of interesting places. And then I asked that some students have never been to an art museum or art show, but most everybody has been to a media center or library. What impact on students does the familiarity of a media center have? And she answered that students are comfortable coming to the library, and it's wonderful to see them stumble upon the unexpected. What's really interesting is to see their interactions change. They're used to touching and moving books around, but when there's art, they take a step back and look respectfully for the most part. They also get quieter, which is fun to see. And yes, our librarian uh, fosters a really wonderful environment in our library. So students are often studying with each other, looking through things, trying to figure things out. So knowing that because of the way she helps monitor the artwork there, the students have kind of a mindset of, oh, this is important work that's going on. We have to be careful not to mess it up. We have to be careful to pay attention, that kind of thing. And I think that's really wonderful because that would be a much harder environment to establish if we were in a gymnasium or something like that. I also asked, do you think media center art shows should be competitive or comprehensive where everyone contributes? And she thought not necessarily competitive, but there should be some minimum standard set, which was input she got from one of her students, which I find interesting because back around 2021, we had a really prolific student that made really wonderful, very intense projects in just one semester. So our other art teacher actually encouraged her to host her own art show. And she did that about a week before our media center show that had all the students. She took over one corner of the media center with about, I think it was 13 of her pieces. And she had a very uh, kind of dark, grungy, music inspired style. So it really felt like she was running her own little art show there. And I remember one of her parents came and supported her, her friends came and supported her, and students she didn't know were able to check out her work. So that it's it's really great to have um, it's really great to encourage students to have their artwork into the show. And I feel a little bit careful about trying to make things competitive in the nature of someone gets first place, someone gets second place, someone gets third place. But I'd rather it much more be the students taking more ownership, like that one student did, where she decided, I've made all this great work, let me show the work that is up to my standard and have it out. So I think that's one thing I look forward to the future is encouraging more students because I teach at the high school level to run art shows of themes that they choose and things that they're interested in and not just necessarily always being led by us teachers and showing what's in our classroom, but also students showing what is their own personal interests. And then also for a media specialist that may not appreciate the messiness or other challenges of an art show, how would you encourage another media specialist at another school to consider working with their art teacher for an art show like this? And she mentioned that there are ways to mitigate any negative impact on the space, and the benefits of bringing a larger number of students to the library far outweighs the negatives. We have done tarps when necessary, displayed items slightly out of reach, etc. It works. And I agree, we always find a way to make things work. I know that personally, in my opinion, in the library setting, something isn't going to get any more broken or messed up than it would in my own classroom having 30 plus students all around. So any danger in a library is usually just more of cleaning up a little bit afterwards. Um, as I mentioned before, we'll have our show run Wednesday, and then Thursday morning we come and clean it up. And I actually go in the morning and take down the more fragile, especially clay pieces. I have a little rolling cart. I'll take them down and put them first. And then when my students come in the morning, they take down the things that are difficult to mess up, like the little bulletin board paper. All you have to do is to take the little bulletin board paper down. It's an easy enough thing to do. And again, because we use that glue, that's the washable glue stick and not the good, really heavy duty glue stick. 9 times out of 10, we're able to pop off um, the artwork from the bulletin board paper and give it back to the student in that same day, usually, because it sticks well enough to keep it on there for the show for those 24-ish hours, but it's also not strong enough to mess up the artwork. So it's great for that. And then lastly, how could our art shows in the media center be improved? She responded that movable walls would be nice. Paper over the bookshelves is not quite enough. She would love to see more of a gallery feel. And I agree with that. It would be lovely if we could have movable panels in which to display the 2D art. The issue is just like always cost and also storage. Storing something like that would not be easy unless it had some kind of multi-purpose use where other people used it as well. Because even if we did use it for that event, that would be something that would only get used once or twice a year. And so trying to outweigh the benefits of that would be interesting. It would be nice if we had more furniture, more display cases that were more um, able to be manipulated to show a wider range of things. But that's just something that you can always think about in the future and try and think about and plan out. It's not something that necessarily has to be done. I've even seen some schools where their cafeteria tables, they are normally folded out like that. And then to close them up, you kind of fold them up like this, and they would actually hang the artwork. They would tape the artwork up on the little sides of the cafeteria tables. So I'm a little bit rougher in that I like to do whatever works. But it would be nice to have more facilities that were just more welcoming to a range of display areas. Um, that's something, especially even with our hallways, we have these very outdated lockers that most students don't use anymore because students don't have traditional thick textbooks anymore. So it would be nice if in the future we could think of ways to repurpose that space to have more display space for our students. All right. And I would just encourage you that if you can put some planning and thought into it and just pace yourself accordingly, you can really provide nice opportunities for your students to exhibit their work. Whether it be in your media center or other venues that you have at your school or in your community, it really means a lot for students to see their artwork out in the community. Because I especially know for me personally, I did not feel like an artist until my artwork was actually on a wall and people were talking about it. I was always appreciated and commented on for being artistic, but it really makes it feel more like a profession, more like a calling, more like a purpose when you're able to support your students in the way of showing their work. And I just want to thank you for watching this professional development on hosting media center art shows at your school. Thank you.